Welcome to Retail Crime Uncovered, your go-to podcast for anything and everything retail crime related, sponsored by Sekura Global. Here is your host, Professor Emmeline Taylor.
Welcome to Retail Crime Uncovered. In today's spotlight, we'll be shining a light on stolen goods and looking to illuminate the hidden markets and disposal routes in which they are sold. And as part of that segment, I'll be catching up on how the Informed Consumers Act in the USA has impacted over there. And following the announcement by Amazon Fresh that they'll be closing all of their UK branches shortly, Sinead and I will be discussing the future of cashierless stores and self-checkout in Newscast.
Spotlight.
For today's Spotlight on stolen goods, I'm joined by Assistant Chief Constable Tom Harding. He's the Director of Operational Standards at the College of Policing, and Gary Higgins, Director of Security and Risk at DeterTech. Welcome, both of you. Tom, I'm going to start with you. And can you just tell us a little bit about the We Don't Buy Crime initiative?
Yeah, well, it was probably 10 years ago now. I was a detective inspector investigating rape and other sexual offences, and I got dragged to headquarters by our Deputy Chief Constable to say, can you have a look at our acquisitive crime strategy in force? Right. Which was an interesting ask. It didn't take me very long because when I looked, we didn't have one. So
job done.
That sadly then prompted that, well, actually, would you like me to have a look at it, etc. So in essence, We Don't Buy Crime was born out of looking at acquisitive crime in the round, understanding where there were gaps in terms of knowledge, understanding our response, etc. And then over a number of years, building up, hopefully, a really holistic approach to acquisitive crime to try and tackle it, improve service to victims. So, yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's been a fascinating and hopefully a good piece of work.
Definitely. And I'm just thinking, does it focus on particular products or particular marketplaces? What's the main sort of area of concern?
Well, initially we were looking at dwelling burglaries, so the burglary of people's homes, because understandably that's hugely impactful, isn't it? The fact that you don't feel safe in your own home moving forward. But very quickly I looked at it and you could see that the same patterns and trends applied across broader acquisitive crime, so retail crime, etc. And indeed the offenders often didn't see themselves as, I'm just a burglar of someone's home. Actually, they'll take the opportunity if they can steal a bike out in public or if they can steal from retail premises, then they'll do that. So that's the programme and the work evolved over time to look at, actually, we can't deal with this in a pigeonhole manner by just looking at one offence type. Yeah.
I think in the public's view, I think quite often they still think of someone selling stolen goods. You know, it's your dodgy character down the local pub. You know, they've got an oversized coat on with racks of stolen watches and things like that. That's quite a laborious way of shifting stolen goods. But have you seen other disposal routes begin to emerge, particularly around maybe e-commerce, or I hear car boot sales are quite common?
Yeah, and that is a key area of the work that we've done, is looking at disposal routes, trying to understand them. We've done that by using covert techniques, so actually taking a risk-based approach. So it might be an item of ours that's stolen, actually letting it run. So making sure that I got the evidence of the initial offence, so I knew who the offender was that stole the property, then letting that property run for often days to understand its journey. What I found out from that is when I'd moved to different forces and different areas where I'd sit in a meeting, we'd look at, we've had a spike in whatever the offence type, and I'd be reassured that it was Bob who's just come out of prison, and it was definitely Bob, and we would run this activity and it absolutely wasn't Bob. And it happened to be...
Bob had just been getting the blame.
For everything. It happened to be individuals often that we had no knowledge of, that they were running the handling as their business. It was their livelihood. And we could start to see the individuals that were running property to them. So they'd commit the offences, obtain the items, take them very quickly to an address, whereby a far more organised approach was adopted to then selling that. That was either through word of mouth, picking up the phone to people they knew would want to buy, or indeed that we have seen a move to online selling.
To online. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think as well, what that covert operation seems to have illuminated is that there are multiple hands that are getting onto these products. We often just think of the person who's stolen it, and then their fence, and then they just sell it on. But you actually saw there's multiple people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the incredibly sad thing about this is those who often commit the initial theft offence. We've identified children who are in care, who've been tasked to go and commit offences. We clearly know that people with substance abuse issues are incredibly vulnerable and commit these offences. Then when you see further up the chain, actually, those organised individuals who have no care in the world for anyone but themselves, especially those individuals, and that was a passion of mine. How do we target, tackle them, take them out of business, and actually prosecute them for what is a more serious offence in terms of the handling of stolen goods?
Yeah, I think often people don't realise that, do they? That 'cause it's a minimum of 7 years. Is that correct?
Yeah,
for handling stolen goods,
is
much more significant
absolutely.
than shop theft itself.
And we're seeing with the government's move to reducing shorter sentences, then actually how are policing going to tackle this? Because we can't continue to send people to prison for a few weeks here and there, and that won't happen moving forward. So what we need to do is make sure that we are tackling those who absolutely should go to prison, who are incredibly callous and are seeking to make quite a considerable amount of money out of their offending. And we also know, and I've seen the patterns and trends, that they are involved in other organised crime, so into drug distribution, etc.
Yeah. And so, using vulnerable children, sometimes, vulnerable adults that might have substance misuse issues or mental health. Are you seeing that as a common pattern then, that there's this level of criminal exploitation within the stolen goods markets?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is an element of some organised criminality with some groups of young people who are going out committing offences. We see it around vehicle crime, etc., where they are they're targeting, they're being told which vehicles they actually want. So the market is really well organised. We've had reports, so we've done a lot of work as well with the second-hand property market. So policing needed to step up its game and actually engage with those retailers that would buy property off the public. So we produced We Don't Buy Crime guidance, got them sign up to that. So minimum ID checking, the asking of very basic questions before you bought something. And that, again, had a significant impact. But, we new offenders were telling us that, for example, jewellers would be involved potentially in commissioning them to go and steal jewellery to bring back to them. They were telling them how to weigh it in their hands when they're in someone's home to make sure it was worth stealing. So the weight was really important. So the organised element of it spreads across so many sectors.
Yeah, definitely. And you just touched upon something there as well, which I think is really key. And it's about changing that public view that it's somehow okay to buy stolen goods. I didn't steal it. And, we seem to have a culture at the moment where it's normalised. You turn a blind eye if you see something for sale on Facebook Marketplace or something like that. But we really need to drive home that if the price is just too good to be true, it's probably not come from a legitimate source. How can we go about doing that, do you think? You mentioned some of the campaign. And
sadly, you can end up in this cycle of people are victims of crime themselves. They need to replace their items. So then they actually hear of an item going cheap. So that, I'm certainly not blaming them. And I completely understand that the devastating impact, certainly tradespeople, of having tools and other bits stolen and then seeking to replace that in a way that you can afford. So it is that breadth of how do we explain that is potentially driving the market? How is policing? Can we do more to track down stolen items, to really invest? And one of the key things for me is policing. We've been through austerity now for a long time, running policing in lots of different places. The challenge to deal with demand is, incredibly difficult. But I've always been an advocate of evidence-based policing, and actually we've got to make sure we're using best practice, because then when we reduce offending, it frees up capacity and time to deal with what people see as higher threat, harm and risk. I don't necessarily agree, because we've seen the impact on young people, we've seen the impact on incredibly vulnerable people.
Absolutely.
So I think it's the whole story that we need to tell far more effectively.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And I think as well that real importance around, the reductions in resource for policing. But as you say, these individuals are often involved in so much other types of criminality that if you take them out for one thing, you're probably then, preventing a whole range of other types of crime as well. So, really, really fantastic initiative. Gary, you work with DeterTech. So just tell us a little bit, for listeners who might not be familiar with this solution, What does it do?
So DeterTech's a private security company. We work very closely with the police. Our main focused areas are around providing site security, providing crime intelligence, and providing forensic marking. So we've got just two key elements to the solutions that I think are fairly well known. So the PID 360, a lot of people call it a Dalek. It's affectionately known as a Dalek.
I've seen those outside Wicks, I think, recently. This weekend, I think I saw one.
Yeah, you'll see them everywhere. Once we talk about them and you see the image of them, you tend to see them everywhere because they're across a very wide range of industries, but essentially provide video verified solutions in mobile CCTV units, which are then reviewed by our own in-house ARC, and then they're escalated wherever they need to go, depending on what the monitors see.
In-house ARC, what does that mean?
So that's our alarm receiving centre. So DeterTech has its own alarm receiving centre. We monitor our own equipment, and then we escalate to where it needs to go.
Okay, so you've got the Daleks, and tell me a little bit about the property marking, because this forensic property marking is a key player now, isn't it, in disrupting the stolen goods market?
Indeed, yeah. So you've heard Tom talk a lot about We Don't Buy Crime, and SmartWater is our forensic marking product. We've been involved in We Don't Buy Crime from the outset, and it's involved an awful lot in the reduction of criminality, again, across a very wide range of industries. We're talking a lot here about the disruption of the stolen goods market. What it does, in effect, with goods is make them uniquely identifiable to the owner. So in the event of that product being stolen at some point and recovered by the police, then we can categorically trace that item back to its original owner.
Okay.
And it goes a step further in that the SmartWater product itself, when it's used in a spray system or as a transferable system, categorically links offenders to the scene of crimes. I say that confidently because in 30 years of trading, SmartWater has a 100% conviction rate.
100%?
In contested court cases, indeed, yeah.
Wow, gosh. And so in the retail sector, how is it being applied? Because some people might say, it's not relevant for fast-moving consumer goods. They're too low value, they're too multiple in quantity. How is it being applied to begin to...
I would argue against that. The first point I would make is that SmartWater is a deterrent. It's a very powerful deterrent. There's some independent research that said that 74% of criminals wouldn't commit a crime where they see the SmartWater sign. In the 15 years that I've been working with DeterTech and SmartWater before, I've seen that in practice on many, many occasions. So I know that the solution works. The signage works. That's your first line of defence. And that should always be the focus around deterring the criminality in the first place. In the event of something being stolen, if it's marked with SmartWater, it's uniquely identifiable back to that location. So therefore, there's a deterrent there, and criminals know that all the time they have that item in their possession, they can be linked back to the scene of their crime.
Yeah, gosh. I recently heard of a case of a huge amount of Lego being discovered and presumed stolen, but they just can't trace who it actually belongs to.
And that's often a situation that police officers face. I was a police officer for 30 years myself, so I know that experience very well. And I've been in many interviews where there's been property on the table between myself and the person that stole it. I know it's stolen. He knows it's stolen. I can't prove it. And there are occasions where the offender ends up walking out with the property because the police can't prove actually where it's come from or whether it's stolen in the first place. Again, the power of SmartWater will make that item uniquely identifiable, and we can categorically prove exactly where that item came from.
Yeah, it provides that key evidential piece of information, doesn't it, to then be able to link it up. So offenders are saying they won't steal from premises that have the SmartWater signage. I can remember clearly as well, many moons ago, interviewing offenders as part of an evaluation of SmartWater, and then they were scared of it because they didn't understand it as well. So it was that fear of the unknown, like, you better not go there, but they couldn't quite articulate sort of why. So I think that was the real power of it then. But yeah, so also, are you seeing that the people who would typically buy stolen goods, so perhaps small businesses, are they also saying we won't buy things? Are they checking things to see whether it might be marked forensically?
Just your first point there around the tactical use of SmartWater. So something that we never actually talk about, what SmartWater is being used. It comes in various formats. So it might be an asset marker which it dries on the product. It's then invisible to the naked eye and virtually impossible to remove. But it might be that we're using a spray system, or it might be that using a transferable grease. So those items then get onto the offender themselves, and again, categorically link that individual back to the scene of the crime. So that's the first element. Sorry, the second part of your question?
No, but that's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think for some retailers, there might be that concern in the back of their head, or we don't want, an honest consumer to end up with this being transferred onto them. But that's absolutely not the case if you choose a particular product. But in other instances, you do want it to transfer. So maybe if it's on perhaps like a window of a warehouse or something like that. So if there's a commercial burglary, is that the case?
Yeah, so I started off saying what DeterTech's focus was, and we have a focus around risk management. So we don't just provide a solution and walk away and leave them with it. We'll manage the risk, assess the risk, and then work with that retailer, for instance, on what's best for that specific problem that they need to focus on. And that might be, for instance, it might be a particular line of goods that are being repeatedly stolen, or it might be a specific location that's being repeatedly attacked. And it's then looking at tactically what can we best do to first of all deter that criminality, and then on occasions it's about they're being repeat victimised. We need to identify the offenders and we need to help the police with that. So there's a key element to the work that we do with the police then. Those forensic products will get onto the offender if they attack the premises. And then the aftercare work is perhaps the most critical thing that we do in support of the police, because everything that DeterTech does in that aftercare of the forensic market is free of charge to the police. So free forensic analysis, free expert witness testimony, and free attendance in court to support the prosecution on behalf of the victim.
And we've used all of those. So I had one particular market town that was being sadly targeted overnight. All of the different stores were being impacted. It was having a huge impact on trust and confidence in that community and the retailers. So we utilised some of the SmartWater systems, actually tracked the offender down. They were wearing balaclava and other bits, but actually by the forensic marking, we were able to go and arrest them based on some intelligence, then recover their clothing that had the marking on, that was enabled us to link them to the scene. So that stopped that crime wave overnight by us being able to identify them.
And that's how quickly you can then deploy the solution to then be like, we've got this issue, let's try and tackle it, catch them red hot.
Yeah, and what Tom was saying earlier about Bob, that was a really good example of everybody in the town was saying it's this particular
it must be this
individual.
Person. Yeah,
it turned out to be a guy living in the town that we didn't know, the police didn't know was actually there.
Wow, gosh, that's hugely powerful. Fantastic. So we've talked about the Daleks at Wickes. Now, there's another partnership there, though, isn't there, that's more focused around tool theft. Can you tell us a bit about?
There is, yes. So the Daleks are used to do what they do. So they deter criminality. They're very visible. They're in your face. They make a lot of noise. They light up. They do what they're designed to do.
My little 4-year-old loves it as well, though. So, yeah, whether it's, he's just quite likes talking to it. It doesn't talk back, though, Tim.
Yeah. Well, you'll see a lot of them. I say there's the best part of 10,000 units out on daily hire across the UK in different areas. So yeah, you'll see an awful lot of those. But with the forensic marking work for Wickes, that's around Wickes and DeterTech working in partnership to support tradespeople. So not only, as you know, as we've talked about, tradespeople suffering considerably with the loss of tools, it has an impact. It has an impact on their livelihood. And there are some issues around tradespeople with suicide. So the third element of that partnership is a company called Calms, who are providing support around those the suicidal thoughts and the issues that tradespeople are suffering as a direct result of tool theft. So we're working in partnership with Wickes to help to reduce tool theft. We'll be providing a SmartWater solution through the Wickes stores for the marking of tools and vans. And then we'll be attending lots of events supported by Wickes to provide free tool marking to tradespeople.
I mean, it is really devastating, the consequences of tool theft, because it's not just stealing those items, it's somebody's livelihood, it's a lost business, and then the financial implications that can have on somebody. When someone first told me about car boot sales being a disposal route for stolen goods, in my head I pictured, your average sort of Sunday afternoon car boot sale. You've got legitimate people just selling, they've cleared out the attic or the garage, they're selling all their own second-hand goods. But no, I mean, these car boot sales, they are just stolen goods, aren't they? I mean, these are people that are just setting up with that primary view. They're not trying to hide it particularly in any way. It's very brazen. What's the answer to that? How do you begin to regulate these spaces
So a big part of that is marking. So how do you attribute a particular item to, which is where property marking comes in. We've also been encouraging the government about ensuring that manufacturers put a property marking, a serial number on items, because then when you go and you've got a table at a car boot of 50 different tools and they've all had the marking ground off them, we'll just seize them all. I suspect it's stolen items. Actually, they put people out of business by being proactive. So trying to use all of the tools in our arsenal to try and make that really uncomfortable. But like I say, neighbourhood policing, visible, well educated in terms of what are the MOs, how do people sell their stolen property, how do they disguise it, to look for property marking. So in the forces I've worked in, I've bought every officer, not with my own money, but a dual purpose torch. So it's a very good torch, but it's also a UV detection light. So again, you can check all of these items of property for any marking, and then you can ask more questions. Or when did you mark this or this particular item? And when people can't answer that, then you've got more and more lines of inquiry.
Yeah, brilliant. Great Christmas present for any police officer, the dual torch. I think that's what we need. So there was the tool theft legislation. Do you feel that went far enough?
I think it's always a challenge, isn't it, for government? They want to try and prevent a crime as much as they can, design it out. And we know that designing out crime at the point of manufacture is really powerful. We saw it, didn't we, when car radios used to be stolen and, the impact that had. Actually, the way that they're now integrated into vehicles just isn't the market for them. And to the same extent, the legislation did try and tackle tool theft. The threshold at which the value of those items, again, difficult. The last thing the government wants to do is increase the cost of items for the consumer, certainly with the cost of living challenge, etc. So it is a really fine balance. But we are continuing to look at, when we understand the routes for these stolen goods, how can we advise government about if there is any changes to legislation, or how do we work with manufacturers to try and design that out?
Yeah, definitely. I think that upstream piece is so important. The same with, packaging, design, integrating various security mechanisms and tags at source, so that then when they reach the retail stores, they've already got a level of protection. I think that's really key. So you've hinted a little bit there, Tom, but what more do you think does need to be done? Perhaps, Gary, if I pass this one to you, what more do you think needs to be done to tackle the stolen goods markets?
I think it's a lot of partnership work. I don't think we can expect the police to do it on their own. There are great opportunities out there to work together with the likes of DeterTech. We do it on a day-to-day basis. We're fortunate that we have our own intelligence function. And what we've managed to negotiate there is an information sharing agreement with the National Police Chiefs Council, which allows SmartWater analysts to see live police crime data. That allows us then to track where the issues are, where the intelligence is, and then to work alongside the police to work with focused work on where those issues are, where those car boot sales are, and where we should be targeting the finite resource that the police have.
Yeah, absolutely. And just this in itself is such a great example of how that partnership is coming together with the private sector and the public sector. What would be your main areas, your recommendations for targeting stolen goods now?
Well, I think I'm the National Director of Operational Standards at the college, so much of that is around driving, high standards across everything that we do operationally. So I suppose my passion here would be is that every force does have a really clear acquisitive crime strategy, that you are looking at it through that lens. It's very easy for us to become responsive to patterns and trends and crime waves, understandably, because the public demand it. How do we make sure that we've got that continuous base of really good practice, which just makes it incredibly difficult for people to profit from crime? And working with Gary, DeterTech, using SmartWater and lots of other private sector companies out there, how do we come together to make sure that strategy is as comprehensive as it can be? And I've always been really encouraged by the response that I've had from the private sector. Businesses are really supportive of policing in the main. They want to work with us, whether they've got a solution themselves or whether they want to prevent themselves from being victims of crime. So, I hopefully with the neighbourhood work, we can just forge more and more of those relationships across communities and have that holistic approach.
Definitely. And we can really feel that it's become tangible now. I think, the work with Opal and the Tackling Retail Crime Together strategy and the Retail Crime Forum, which was headed up by the Minister for Policing. So we're just seeing that picture come together. I think it's a really exciting time. I just wanted to ask you one more question. We've spoken quite a bit around disposal routes that are in person. How do we begin to tackle the e-commerce space? Does DeterTech play a role in this and forensic marking? Is that possible through e-commerce platforms?
It's certainly possible. The very fact that the tool is marked, the item of property is marked, whatever it might be. You can mark anything from your wedding ring to your lawnmower in your home, for instance. And then tools is an obvious one. But all sorts of property can be marked, making that property uniquely identifiable. Gives the police a starting point. So if you, as an investigator, you see these items of property that come up from the same sellers time and time again, without the ability to be able to uniquely identify that item of property, you're almost starting on a losing footing. Yeah. What this does is give you some unique evidence, and it gives you a starting point. It's evidence that needs to be corroborated, but it gives you a starting point.
And do you feel that there's anything around the e-commerce space, changes in legislation perhaps? What's your disposal routes research telling you?
Well, e-commerce sometimes gets used as an excuse for why we can't tackle it because it becomes too difficult. But actually, when you look at it, a lot of e-commerce is people selling locally to local people. Yeah. And you see the stories in the press, don't you, about people who've had their bikes stolen. They find them online. They call the police that evening because they're going to go and recover that item. And it's so frustrating as an officer. I'm incredibly proud of policing, but when we can't physically get there at that moment in time, and I've been there where I've got 20 officers on duty in a certain area, and sadly there's lots going on, lots of high harm issues that you're tackling with that moment in time, and you know that someone wants you to go and help recover that item and arrest the offender, and so frustrating when we can't. But we are getting far better. Policing signed up to follow all reasonable lines of inquiry through our investigations, authorised professional practice, and we are starting to see a significant improvement, I think, in the national response where we identify where stolen property is. Yeah. We're definitely moving in the right direction, and we know that if we tackle these, it will free up resource. If we can drive down crime in these areas, businesses can thrive, communities can feel safer, they can have more trust and confidence in us.
Definitely. Thank you so much. That was super interesting. And such fantastic work. Great partnership. It's really, really heartening to hear. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you to Tom and Gary. Some really interesting insights there, and I think some really positive messaging as well on how to disrupt the stolen goods markets. Now, staying on the topic of stolen goods, the Informed Consumers Act was introduced in America in 2023. We've discussed it previously on the podcast with Reeler's Lisa Labruno back in episode 4. If you want to go back and have a listen, it's really interesting, the beginnings of this initiative. The goal of the Informed Consumers Act was to add more transparency to online transactions, to deter criminals from selling stolen or counterfeit products. And if they did try to, the ambition was that they would be identified quickly. So I caught up with asset protection guru Jason Davies over there in America to find out what impact it's had 2 years down the line. Jason, welcome to Retail Crime Uncovered. Just how big a problem is peer-to-peer e-commerce platforms in relation to the on-sale of stolen goods in the USA?
Well, I think, first of all, if we look at the scale of impact, we're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars internationally. We've had a dramatic increase since 2023. 2024 saw a 93% increase in the average shoplifting incidents per year. Online marketplaces continue to be that number one venue for offloading stolen property, but we're also seeing some recruitment through those as well. You have
How does that work?
Large illegitimate wholesalers will look at high frequency sellers and contact those individuals and start pipelining shipments to their warehouses. Part of that is we're also seeing a lot of this product now being shipped overseas. It's always been an issue, but now we're seeing a marked increase in that nationally.
Gosh, and so It's been a couple of years now since the Informed Consumers Act, and I know, having been at RELA and other industry conferences over there in the USA, this was hotly anticipated to be part of the solution for tackling the stolen goods markets, and particularly that e-commerce peer-to-peer platforms. Has it delivered?
Well, I can tell you that as of a week ago, we saw our first actual fine on Temu, which was a $2 million fine for failure to provide telephonic reporting, and then also providing information on high-frequency sellers that weren't providing information. So that's the first major step as far as not adhering to the Inform Act requirements. As actual case identification, I know there are some retailers, specifically here in the United States, that are looking at some of this information, but as a whole, the Inform Act has not delivered what we thought it would for us.
So it almost sounds like the legislation was there and it was absolutely the right thing to do, but perhaps, the devil's in the detail. Perhaps the way that it's actually been operationalised still has a few gaps there. Do you think it's set to improve?
I think it is. I think it's going to take a concerted effort between the private and public sector. I think that retailers as a whole, we're starting to see more and more true criminal intelligence programs being put in place within retail investigative branches, whether that's on their ORC team, business intelligence teams, where they are able to gain access to this information a lot more easily. It's not just put in spreadsheets, it's actually put in through an API or even through AI to be able to triage that real time.
So some other countries have been looking to the USA and thinking perhaps, maybe we need some similar legislation to just send a really strong and clear message to offenders that now this is going to be much harder to have that anonymity online to sell stolen goods or counterfeit goods. What would be your advice then? How would we sort of overcome some of those teething problems so that 2 years after passing legislation, which in itself takes a good few years to actually get over the line, how can we maybe learn from the USA, do you think?
What I would tell, some other country is, have your game plan and stick to your game plan once that's passed. But you have to start preparing beforehand. So who's going to be responsible for that information within your corporation or your company? What law enforcement partners are going to be needed to be able to ensure the free flow of intelligence? We know we have hundreds of thousands of sellers. We can't go after hundreds of thousands of sellers. So what does that threshold look like? What should we be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps use of, artificial intelligence to be able to scrape some of that data to be able to, identify the more suspicious transactions. But Jason, thank you so much for that update. Really interested. I'm sure we're going to hear from you again soon on Retail Crime Uncovered.
Appreciate it.
Newscast.
Hi, Sinead. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Really good, thank you. I've just been talking to Tom and Gary about the stolen goods markets, and they're doing such fantastic work, but it just seems to be such a hard nut to crack.
Absolutely. It's so interesting, though, listening to talk about it. But I saw you recently observing the Met on some early morning operations. Was that targeting shops that were selling stolen goods? Tell me about that.
It was super interesting. When the invite landed in my inbox, I couldn't quite believe it. So they were doing, it's called like precision policing. They were doing a almost undercover high sting operation to target the businesses that were buying stolen goods. So They used property marking that Gary was talking about. They marked the products that they knew were being stolen frequently, and then they already had intel on where it was being sold, and so they targeted those locations, armed with their UV lights. And some of the officers were just saying it just lit up like Christmas. Everything stolen: wine, tobacco, confectionery. The Met Police told me the number one stolen chocolate. What do you reckon it is in London?
Is it going to be something obscure now?
Well, I was a bit surprised. It was something I remember from my childhood as being, sort of very luxurious, but it's not one that I'd necessarily choose anymore.
What, like a Ferrero Rocher?
It's a Ferrero Rocher. There you go.
I love them.
And so I do love them.
I love them.
And just the little gold packaging.
It did make me feel really fancy at Christmas time, didn't it?
So fancy. But I think you only get about 10 in a box or something. Yeah. They were just gone in no time.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, hugely successful. So they called it Op Zoraden or Zoraden. I'm not quite sure which one they pronounce it. And it's no surprise it was so successful. So the Silver Command officer was Luke Baldock, who we had on the show not that long ago. And so he was using this really targeted initiative, and they made several arrests. They had trading standards, a fire brigade joining them, and seized tens of thousands of pounds of tobacco as well that was stolen. So really, really exciting to actually observe that at the time.
It must have been months, years in the planning.
I don't know how long.
Huge
it took
operation.
Them. I mean, the hardest bit for me is that they had, it's completely embargoed.
Yeah.
So they were like, you can't tell anybody about this.
Yeah,
I really need to tell someone. This is so exciting.
I have done a couple of police raids in my journalistic career.
You?
Early morning with the police, smashing doors in and stuff like that.
Gosh. I know. There's a whole other side to you, Sinead.
I was observing. I didn't smash any of the doors. But it is incredible to see the police at work, isn't it, really? Because otherwise we just hear little bits in there. I mean, obviously you're a lot more involved, but it is fascinating.
Yeah, it was brilliant. And, it managed to get the attention of the Minister for Policing, Sarah Jones. She was there, but the Ops Centre in South London, we had Sadiq Khan popped in as well, the Mayor of London, and he spoke about his passion around tackling retail crime. So, really high-level event. So, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. But today you've picked up on a story from Amazon Fresh. So they've just announced they're going to close all of their UK premises. What's this about?
Yeah, so Amazon Fresh, you may have seen one. They look very futuristic. I went in one once. I don't really know what's going on. It's basically like the first automated stores.
Fully automated. Yes. There's no point of sale. There's no cashiers.
No. The idea is you walk in, you tap your phone, your card, whatever, and it's attached to your Amazon account. Pick up what you want, and then you walk out, which feels illegal.
Yeah, exactly. It's encouraging the very behaviour that we've been trying to stop for years.
Exactly.
But they call it the just walk out approach.
So it's just walk out. No tills, like you say. But they opened 19 5 years ago, and they're shutting all of them now. They say want to focus on online delivery service. So it already partners with Morrison's and Iceland and GoPuff. And they said it was a difficult decision, but through evaluating business operations, they feel like online delivery is where they need to focus their things. The thing is with Amazon, though, they've got so much money, they can try anything out, and it really doesn't affect the profits too much. So they can be as innovative as they want. They can try these things and then go, okay, fine.
Yeah.
5 of the stores are going to be converted into the Whole Foods stores.
Interesting.
So they're those very fancy, fresh food.
Oh, they're beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
Everything, the shelves are just full of, everything just looks so nice.
It does. And expensive. Yeah.
It is a bit pricey, isn't it?
You're paying £1 per peanut is probably the average there. But, they're hugely popular. And Jeff Bezos and Amazon bought them in 2017.
Not many people know that.
No,
I don't think. It just
don't.
sort of went under the radar. But this is one of the biggest acquisitions that Amazon have made.
It is. $13.7 billion he paid for it.
Which is just £1 peanuts.
Exactly, which was just less than what he paid for his wife and Katy Perry to go to space. So,
gosh.
Yeah.
A bargain then in comparison.
Exactly. But what's interesting around this is, and I know you know a bit about this because there was this really interesting piece in the Business Insider. You were actually quoted in it, weren't you? Thieves are targeting Whole Foods because they don't like Jeff Bezos.
So they say. Now, do you think this is, sort of post hoc rationalising, saying, well, I only stole from there because I've got an ideological, or political point to make. But actually, they're just shoplifting, the rest of them. They're as bad as the rest. So I hear these excuses so often.
Right.
But I don't know. What do you think? Is there grounds to that?
No, because that is not going to affect Jeff Bezos and his billions and trillions of pounds or whatever. That's not really. They will just regard that as like you say, petty theft. Okay, whatever. It's not really telling. He's not going to be sat there going, oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a bad
exactly.
man. You've stolen a lettuce from me. So no, and there's there's other ways to protest.
There's other ways, isn't there, to make that point?
You don't have to commit crimes to get your point across.
But I just think the moral gymnastics that these people can do to try and excuse these criminal behaviours, I just think is so shocking, I guess. But there was a TV documentary on in the UK a few months ago now, and I just remember there was this young girl, maybe sort of early 20s, and she said she would steal plastic, costume jewellery or anything made of plastic, because what that meant to her is that she wasn't contributing to the use of single plastics. And I was just like, this doesn't add up. You're still stealing it. So just because you're not paying money, you're still then generating a demand for that product to be made and used and stuff. And I just thought, oh, wow, like this to me is very similar to the I'll steal from Whole Foods because that's somehow moral to do so.
No. Well, that plastic one, that's insane. You've taken it off the shelf so they will restock it, so they will think people want it. That doesn't,
Exactly.
Okay, well.
Very odd. Some of the excuses people come up to. But yeah, that Business Insider article I just thought was fascinating. And I wonder whether it will then translate over here. Will Whole Foods find themselves being targeted by retail criminals?
Well, who knows? I mean, I guess like you say, like not many people know that he owns it.
They do now.
They do now.
Breaking news.
Hey guys.
They'll trace it all back to Retail Crime Uncovered.
But what is interesting is this technology, though, isn't it? The just walk out technology. So they're not getting rid of it. They're going to sell it to other retailers and venues. So it's not going away completely. But really, is it what people in this country want? Like, you look at somewhere like China, so many of their shops now, warehouses, everything, are fully automated. And there's interesting, like, sort of ideas behind why that is. One school of thought is that young people in China don't want to work in shops. So actually, this is the way forward. And
it's so hard to recruit into the retail sector. So, yeah, absolutely. Maybe it's more that businesses are going to have to try and embrace this type of technology because they just can't recruit people that they need. And so some other grocery stores have been having a little foray with this type of just walk out technology. So I think, was it Aldi? But the issue was they required a preloaded £10 to be spent. And some customers were saying that if they then didn't spend £10, it was taking forever for it to go back onto their card. So bit of an issue there. Do you think it could take off?
Yeah, no. So they trialled it in one store, and like as you say, big sort of backlash. You had to they'd take £10 off your card as you walked in, and like you say, you might only spend £3, and then you're waiting weeks sometimes for the £7 to come back, or if you don't buy anything at all, which you might not, so that feels like annoying. Like, I don't need to go to that Aldi. I can go somewhere else and not like lose the £7 or whatever.
And it takes something really slick and makes it clunky.
Exactly.
Like, that's my issue with that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we're in the very early stages of all of this, right? So, self-checkouts, some people still don't like them. They're still annoying at times, aren't they? I mean, I know for me, like with Sainsbury's, they don't let you put your bag down without having to call a person over to get the weight of that. Like, even that's not working. And that's
what irritates me, because I feel like I'm having to like put everything in the trolley, everything on the scale, then everything on the things to then and then in your bag. Like, whoa,
it's annoying.
Yeah, I'd like to go to the cashier, especially if I'm with my little one.
Yeah,
I'm not messing about with that.
Tesco had 4 sort of hybrid, these kind of just walk out stores. But I think really there's got to be some kind of middle ground where maybe it's like, I know in China they have like the AI powered cameras to just see when stock's low on certain things, and that just alerts somebody, and they're like, oh, okay, right, eggs are down, let's get that. Maybe they're the sort of little steps we need to take first of all, or to just be monitoring people stealing stuff, things like that.
But that on-shelf availability, I think, for that monitoring, I think that is really, like, such a great deployment of it. But But yeah, I just wonder, are we really there yet? Because we haven't quite nailed self-service
No.
checkout yet. So there was a recent study showing 1 in 4 baskets still had an error in it. So, you extrapolate that across a number of customers. There's a lot of problems still going on, whether that's malicious or whether it is just accidental. I think genuinely people still do accidentally take things that they didn't mean to, or pay twice.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can go both ways, and a customer ends up spending more, which isn't a great experience for them. So yeah, I just wonder if we need to actually be able to figure out self-service before we begin to automate it.
Yeah, I just don't think we're quite as advanced as China when it comes to all of this yet. So,
No.
And like you said, I love going to a cashier.
Me too. Talk about the weather.
Yeah, they're always lovely, and it's just in and out, and there's no problems, whereas the checkouts can just be so infuriating.
Yeah.
So they're, hi, me again, and there's at least 4 other people waiting for somebody. Sorry.
Yeah.
I can't find the lemons on this screen, and they're like, yeah.
But yeah, it's super interesting. I love this interplay of technology and retail, and it'd be so great to see how the Whole Foods rollout goes. Maybe we'll try and get some of the guys from there on the show next time.
Yeah, maybe Jeff, if you're listening.
Well, it's hard to believe, but that's a wrap on season 3 of Retail Crime Uncovered, and what a journey it has been. As ever, please do keep in touch and let us know your thoughts on any of the topics that we've covered in this season, or any others that you'd like us to look at in the upcoming season next year. We'll see you on the other side of the golden quarter. Thanks for listening.